During the month of March, we honor St. Joseph, and while we don't know many facts about St. Joseph, we know that he played a great role in the salvation history. And Father Gary Castor, who has been with us before, the Catholic chaplain at Williams College, joins us to talk about his latest book, Joseph, the Man Who Raised Jesus. Thanks for being with us again, Father.
Thank you for inviting me back. It's good to be here.
Tell us what made you decide to write a book about St. Joseph.
My mother.
Your mom? It was your mom, huh?
My mother's favorite saint, and so we grew up with my mother always encouraging us to have recourse to St. Joseph. In fact, we heard this story over and over about how she was saying a novena to St. Joseph to find a husband, and she went to a wedding reception and saw this man come in, and she said, "That's the man Joseph created, God created for me to be my husband," and that was my father.
Oh, that's great.
So,
now, from your book, I get this impression, tell me if I'm correct or not. Do you think that that we could say that St. Joseph leads us to Eucharistic faith because our lives are centered on the Eucharist?
absolutely. I think that's a good point to bring up for people, because St. Joseph, with the whole rich history that he had as being part of the people of Israel, now all of a sudden his life, all of that richness of faith that he practiced becomes centered on the child, the Christ child, the Mary's child, in the same way that our lives are supposed to be centered. So he's really the first one invited into a Eucharistic faith, the person of Jesus, the person of Mary's son, being the center of everything that he understood before, and expanding everything that he understood before, the way he prayed before, the way he understood the Psalms, even the history of his people. All of that now just widely expanded by this child that he welcomes into his home, in the same way that we should welcome Christ into our hearts, into our homes, into our lives, every aspect of our lives, the TV set, the TV audience, everybody out there.
All of you out there.
All of you, everybody, wherever you are.
All of you out there right now. So there are no recorded words of St. Joseph's in Scripture. What do you think of that?
I think it reminds us that sometimes less in terms of speech is more. And also that, sometimes with Scripture, because of so many things that are said and the people that speak these words, people want to parse everything. Well, you can't do that with Joseph. You can't say, well, I think he meant this, and maybe perhaps because of what he experienced before, this is why he said that. You can't do that. People do that with Paul, and they do it, with the Gospel of John, and people, get into philology and linguistics and all this stuff. You can't do that with Joseph. Mm-hmm. You can only judge him by what his actions were and how he responded to what God the Father was asking him to do. No hesitation, no, questioning of himself. Oh, am I really up for this? And why would God ask me? And I'm not worthy. None of that. He simply responds. He has confidence in what God has asked him to do, and he does it.
I find it very interesting. I'm so glad that you wrote this book, because I think a lot of times we go right past Joseph. It's Jesus and Mary and the apostles, and there's Joseph, who played such an integral role in all of this. While you were writing this book, a lot of times people reflect as they write books. What did you learn about your relationship with Joseph?
I think the first thing that really struck me is that many people think of Joseph as a carpenter, and the way we think of carpentry today. But at that period of time, there's not a lot of wood. There's not huge forest in the ancient Mideast, and so most of the carpentry that he did was ordered towards stonemasonry and building. There was a lot of building going on back then, so he probably had a lot of work to do. And the fact that this was a central part of how he did his carpentry, working with construction and building and stonemasonry, and that Jesus is the stone rejected by the builders. So just reflecting on that, it was a whole new insight for me, and the selection of Joseph as the fitting person to raise the stone rejected by the builders, the son of the eternal Father. That was something I hadn't really, I sort of knew that from my studies, but I never really took it to heart. But that sort of changed what I thought about Joseph, and certainly his fittingness for this just tremendous responsibility.
I'm dying to read the book. I know that Jesus and Mary and Joseph, their family was probably a little bit different than ours, because Mediterranean families were a lot of relatives around, craziness and everything. So I'm dying to read the book and learn more about my relationship as a guy to St. Joseph. And where can our viewers find out more about the book and get a copy?
Well, they can contact Franciscan Media or Servant Books. It's available on Amazon. you track me down, you want a signed copy, just send me an
Ooh.
email. I'll be happy to send you one. And some Barnes & Noble, some local Catholic bookstore. So
I wonder if, I can almost hear Joseph in the house there getting asked a question by Jesus, and I can almost hear him say, "Go ask your mother that."
Well, I think the beauty of the scene in the temple when Mary and Joseph return and they find Christ there, that scene is so beautiful because it shows Jesus must have been comfortable doing this. He must have at home, he must have, just like you said, he must have felt free to ask these questions such that he could sit there with these learned men and just be comfortable with them and say, this passage or whatever it was. I mean, that's, when I get to heaven, there's a lot of things I want to do. First, I want to taste the wine of Cana, but then I want to, I would like to just watch that. What were the questions that Jesus asked? And, what did they say? And the expression on these guys' face, and who is this guy? Who is this young man?
Well, Father, thank you so much for being with us today. Always a
great.
pleasure
Thank
to
you.
have you here.
Thank you.
And best of luck with the book. It looks
Thank you
great.
very much.